Okay, so you've probably been hearing a lot about the upcoming German elections in 2025
Yeah.
and how things are getting, well,
Hmm.
interesting to say the least.
Definitely interesting.
One party in particular is shaking things up.
For sure.
The Alternative for Germany, or AfD.
Right, the AfD.
And you might be thinking, okay, another political party, what's the big deal?
Yeah, you hear about new parties all the time.
But here's the thing. They're polling as the second largest party right now.
Which is huge.
And they're coming in from the far right.
Yeah, and that's what's got everyone's attention.
Exactly.
What's really fascinating is that this party, the AfD, has only been around for a little over a decade.
Really?
Yeah, just over a decade. They started out as a group,
Okay.
mainly concerned with the euro,
Right.
saying it was a bad deal for Germany.
So kind of like what is it?
Eurosceptic.
Eurosceptic, right?
Yeah, deeply critical of the European Union and how it operates.
Oh, okay.
But as we know, the AfD story doesn't end there.
Right, it's gotten much bigger than just the euro.
Much bigger. They've evolved, tapping into a lot of the anxieties people are feeling.
Like what kind of anxieties?
Well, worries about immigration, the economy, a sense that national identities are being lost. This unease that's been building across Europe and, honestly, globally.
Yeah, you see that everywhere these days.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And the AfD shifted their message to play on these fears.
So they saw an opportunity.
Definitely. And they became more nationalistic, more right-wing in their approach.
And it was during this shift that Alice Weidel started to climb the ranks, right? And now she's their co-chair and candidate for chancellor.
Right.
Which, for those who maybe aren't familiar with the German system, is kind of like the prime minister.
Yeah, the one calling the shots.
But Weidel, she's not your typical politician.
No, she's not.
Not at all.
She's a bit of an enigma,
Okay, tell me more.
Well, I mean, you've got a woman with a doctorate in economics, someone who worked at Goldman Sachs,
Wow.
speaks fluent Mandarin, is openly lesbian,
Okay.
and lives in Switzerland with her Sri Lankan-born partner and their 2 adopted children.
So, on paper, not exactly who you'd picture leading a far-right party.
Right.
There's a lot of contradictions.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so important. We need to unpack who Alice Weidel is, what she stands for,
Okay.
and what her potential rise to power could mean, not just for Germany, but for the world.
So, is Alice Weidel a political anomaly, or is she the face of a new, more volatile Europe?
That's the question we're going to try to answer.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's rewind a bit.
Yeah.
So the AfD first pops up back in 2013, right?
Right.
And they were mainly focused on getting Germany out of the Eurozone.
That's right. They were saying the euro was a bad deal.
Which is what being Eurosceptic means.
Exactly. Being deeply critical of the European Union and how it operates.
Got it. But as we know, the AfD story doesn't end there.
Not even close.
So what happened?
Well, they started tapping into this wave of unease that was building across Europe.
Right, we talked about that.
Those worries about immigration, the economy,
Yeah.
that sense that national identities were being lost.
It's a powerful narrative.
It is. And they shifted their message to play on these fears.
And they became more nationalistic, more right-wing during this time?
Exactly. And that's when Alice Weidel started to climb the ranks.
And she was a big part of that shift, wasn't she?
Oh, absolutely. She became instrumental in shaping the AfD's direction, especially on immigration and the EU.
Which are their 2 biggest issues.
2 of their biggest, yeah.
So let's unpack some of her policies. When it comes to immigration,
Okay.
Weidel is all about tight borders,
Yes.
strict controls,
Mm-hmm.
even deportations for those she deems unfit.
Right. She's very outspoken about that.
And this ties into the AfD's larger message about protecting German culture and identity.
Absolutely.
This sounds familiar, right? Like we're seeing this kind of rhetoric in other countries too.
It's a theme we're seeing play out in different forms around the world, this pushback against globalization, this fear of cultural change.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just about immigration for Weidel, is it?
No, it's not.
She also wants to drastically change Germany's relationship with the EU, even talking about leaving it completely.
Yeah, which is a huge deal.
Huge EE deal, because, economically speaking, Germany is the big dog in the EU.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, if Germany, under Weidel, shifts away from EU fiscal policies,
Okay.
it could trigger a domino effect, emboldening other Eurosceptic movements
Wow.
and potentially weakening the Eurozone.
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me.
Okay, I'm listening.
Weidel is openly gay, lives with her female partner,
Right.
but the AfD is strongly against LGBTQ plus rights.
Yes, things like same-sex marriage.
So how do you make sense of that?
Well, it shows just how complex people's beliefs can be, even within a political movement.
Right. It's not always so straightforward.
We tend to think people's political views perfectly match their personal values, but it's rarely that simple.
Yeah, you're right.
Weidel's case shows that sometimes people prioritize some beliefs over others.
It definitely adds a layer of intrigue to her story.
For sure.
It makes you think twice about how we judge people and political parties.
Absolutely.
You can't just put people or movements into neat little boxes.
There's always more to this story.
Speaking of more to the story, let's talk about energy and climate.
Okay.
This is where Weidel's views get pretty radical.
In what way?
She's all in on nuclear power.
Ah, I see.
Which, of course, goes against Germany's current move towards renewable energy.
So she's pushing back against that trend.
Hard. She argues that renewable energy is too unreliable.
Okay.
And that Germany needs nuclear power to be truly energy independent.
Which, of course, brings up a whole bunch of debates.
Oh, for sure.
About economic impacts, long-term environmental risks,
right,
and which energy sources are actually feasible.
So we're starting to get a sense of who Alice Weidel is.
Definitely a complex picture.
Complex, controversial, and definitely not afraid to shake things up.
Yeah, she's a force to be reckoned with.
But we've only just scratched the surface.
There's still a lot to unpack.
That's right.
To really understand her significance, we need to dive into the controversies and criticisms surrounding both her and the AfD.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up.
All right, I'm ready for part 2. Okay, so we just got a glimpse into some of Alice Weidel's controversial views.
Yeah, definitely some strong opinions there.
But now, I think we need to dive deeper into the storm surrounding both her and the AfD.
Right. It's important to understand.
Because these aren't just, political disagreements we're talking about here.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about accusations of xenophobia, anti-Semitism,
right?
The use of extreme right-wing rhetoric.
It's serious stuff.
It really is. This isn't just about, policy debates anymore.
No, it's much bigger than that.
This is about rhetoric that can have a real impact on people's lives.
Absolutely.
And on the fabric of society.
It raises concerns about this dangerous trend we're seeing globally.
Okay, what trend?
The normalization of extremist views in mainstream politics.
And that's something that demands our attention.
It does, regardless of where we stand politically.
Absolutely. And just to be clear to our listeners,
yeah,
our goal here isn't to endorse or condemn any particular viewpoint,
right,
but rather to present a clear picture of what's happening.
To lay it all out.
And let you, the listener, draw your own conclusions.
That's the point.
That's the beauty of a deep dive like this, right?
Exactly.
We're trying to equip ourselves with the knowledge and context to form our own informed opinions.
I like that. Informed opinions.
Speaking of context, there was one incident that really put Weidel and the AfD under the microscope.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the live stream.
That live stream with Elon Musk back in January?
Right, where they both made the claim that Hitler was a communist.
And that ignited a firestorm.
It did, yeah. A lot of condemnation, widely labeled as a dangerous distortion of history.
Which is true. I mean, it's simply not true.
Yeah, right. Hitler and the Nazi Party were violently anti-communist.
It's not even up for debate.
No, it's a historical fact.
And for me, that incident really highlighted this concerning trend of historical revisionism.
Yeah, twisting facts to fit a narrative.
And with someone like Elon Musk, who has millions and millions of followers,
it's terrifying.
It's alarming how quickly that kind of misinformation can spread.
And it shows the potential pitfalls of those unfiltered platforms.
Like Twitter.
Where misinformation can just spread like wildfire.
And unfortunately for Weidel, this wasn't the only controversy she's been embroiled in.
Right. There were also those investigations
into potential illegal campaign financing.
Tied to her past campaigns.
And these investigations cast a shadow over her, right?
Yeah, definitely.
They raise serious questions about transparency and accountability.
For sure.
So it's clear that Weidel isn't just a politician with different opinions.
Right.
She's a lightning rod.
Yeah, she attracts controversy.
For controversy. And her rise really signals a shift in German politics.
Absolutely. And this shift is reverberating far beyond Germany's borders.
Really?
Political analysts around the world are watching very closely.
Why is that?
Well, because the AfD's rise to prominence kind of mirrors a global trend.
What trend?
Far-right populism gaining ground.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
And look at what a Weidel-led Germany could actually look like.
In practice.
Yeah, like what could this mean for the economy,
Mm-hmm.
for social dynamics, for Germany's role in the world?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. It's causing a lot of anxiety.
For sure. Not just in Germany, but internationally.
Because we're not just talking about, like, political theories here.
No, this is real-world stuff.
This is potential real-world impact.
On people's lives.
On their livelihoods.
On Germany's standing on the global stage.
Yeah, it's serious. One of Weidel's biggest campaign promises
Okay, tell me.
is a major overhaul of the economy.
Right, she wants to shake things up.
She's pushing for significant tax cuts, deregulation, and a more protectionist approach to trade.
Especially within the EU.
Now, she argues that these measures will boost economic growth, empower German businesses.
That's the idea.
But of course, there are critics who warn that these policies could backfire.
Yeah, what are they saying?
Well, they say it could destabilize Germany's financial relationships with its EU partners.
Which makes sense.
Right. Because remember, Germany is the economic powerhouse of Europe.
It is.
If it were to adopt, like, a more isolationist or protectionist stance,
the consequences could be huge.
They could ripple across the entire continent.
Absolutely.
And then there's the issue of Germany's energy future.
Right. What about that?
Weidel is a staunch advocate for nuclear power.
Which goes against the current government's focus on renewables.
Yeah, she's not shy about criticizing that.
And she's arguing that nuclear power is essential for energy independence.
So this sparks a crucial debate.
It does, for sure.
Weidel's push for nuclear raises concerns.
About what?
About environmental risks, about waste disposal.
Yeah, those are big issues.
It also sends a mixed message globally.
Right.
You know, it could potentially undermine Germany's commitment to climate goals.
Yeah, because it's not just about Germany keeping its lights on anymore.
No.
It's about its role as a leader in the fight against climate change.
So we've got these potential economic and environmental shifts, but then there are the social and political ramifications to consider as well.
Like what?
Well, the AfD, under Weidel's leadership, has become a divisive force.
Yeah, you see that.
We're seeing a growing polarization.
Between who?
Between those drawn to the AfD's message
of national identity
and those who see them as a threat to Germany's democratic values.
And commitment to inclusivity.
And this is a trend we're seeing mirrored in many countries.
Yeah, it's not unique to Germany.
Where anxieties about globalization,
and economic inequality,
cultural change
are fueling the rise of populist and nationalist movements.
And these movements often prey on a sense of grievance, don't they?
They do.
Offer simple solutions
to very complex problems.
Often scapegoating minority groups or external forces.
Yeah, it's a pattern.
It's a dangerous dynamic.
It is.
Because it can erode trust in institutions and create fertile ground for intolerance.
Exactly. And this is why Weidel's potential rise to power is being watched so closely.
Around the world.
Yeah, not just in Europe.
It's a development loaded with uncertainty.
And potential consequences.
You know, there's another layer to all of this that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
This whole idea of traditional values.
Right.
And this is where things get really tricky with Weidel.
I mean, on the one hand, you have Weidel, who's an openly gay woman.
Right.
But on the other, she's leading a party that often promotes
views that could be considered
anti-LGBTQ plus.
Right.
It's a real head-scratcher.
Because the AfD's platform often emphasizes traditional family structures, opposes same-sex marriage.
Right, and is pretty skeptical about things like what they call radical gender ideologies. Here's Weidel living openly with her partner and their children.
Right. It just seems like...
This doesn't quite add up.
No, it doesn't add up. It makes you wonder if she's truly on board with all of the AfD's positions on these social issues.
Yeah, like, is there some kind of disconnect between her personal life and her political agenda?
It's a question that has a lot of people debating.
It does. And honestly, only Weidel herself can definitively answer that.
I mean, it's a great example of how complex people's beliefs can be.
Yeah, and how we can't just assume someone's political views perfectly align with their personal life.
Exactly.
Or that every member of a party thinks exactly alike.
It reminds us to think critically and not jump to conclusions.
Exactly. The world of politics is rarely black and white.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Alice Weidel, I think it's safe to say we've covered a ton of ground.
A lot of information.
We've gone from her background to her policies,
their controversies,
the potential global ripple effects of her rise to power,
We've seen how she embodies both the hopes and fears of this current political moment,
Right, how she taps into the anxieties people are feeling.
but also raises concerns about the future of democracy.
And we've explored this paradox of her personal life
Yeah.
versus her political platform.
And how that complexity really challenges us to look deeper.
But now it's time to turn it over to you, the listener.
That's right.
What are your takeaways from this deep dive?
What surprised you?
What resonated with you? What are your thoughts on the potential rise of a far-right leader in Germany?
What questions are still swirling in your mind?
Because remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, the conversation continues.
It's up to each of us to stay informed, to have these open and thoughtful discussions,
Absolutely.
and to actively engage with the world around us.
I completely agree.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Alice Weidel.
It's been a pleasure.
Keep exploring. The more we know, the better equipped we are to face whatever the future holds.